Welcome to the Hercule Poirot Story Podcast, dear listeners, where the little grey cells unravel the most intricate webs of deception in tales of mystery and cunning intellect. If these enigmas captivate your curiosity, do subscribe now. Unlock premium episodes, exclusive insights, and join our circle of sleuths solving crimes from the shadows. Tonight, delve into a vanishing act that turns deadly, where a virtuoso's final bow echoes with betrayal. But what if the strings of fate are pulled by a hand closer than you think? Stay with us. Chapter 1. The Ember's Call. In the shadowed valleys of Eldridge Hollow, where ancient redwoods pierced the mist-shrouded sky like the spines of forgotten giants, the village of Thornwick clung to the edge of the world, as if defying gravity itself. The year was 1872, a time when steam engines chugged through distant cities. But here, in this remote enclave nestled between jagged cliffs and a restless sea, life moved to the rhythm of tide and tempest. Cobblestone paths wound between timber-framed cottages, their thatched roofs sagging under the weight of perpetual damp, while lanterns swayed from iron hooks, casting pools of amber light that danced like fireflies in the fog. The air was thick with the brine of crashing waves below, and the earthy tang of moss-cloaked stones, a scent that seeped into every pore, reminding residents that nature's embrace was as nurturing as it was unforgiving. Elara Voss, a young cartographer of 23 with a mane of auburn curls that rebelled against any pin or ribbon, had returned to Thornwick after a decade in the bustling academies of London. Her skin, kissed by the sun of far-flung expeditions, bore faint freckles like a map of constellations, and her hazel eyes held the sharpness of one who charted not just lands, but the hidden contours of human intent. Clad in a practical woolen dress hemmed for mobility, with a leather satchel slung across her shoulder containing compasses, inks, and rolled parchments, Elara stepped off the creaking stagecoach, her boots sinking into the muddied lane. She had come at the behest of a cryptic telegram from her estranged uncle, Harlan Voss, the village's reclusive lighthouse keeper. Return at once. The Ember's Call. Maps hold the key. The village square buzzed with subdued activity, fishermen mending nets by the harbour's edge, their calloused hands weaving stories of storms survived, a baker hawking loaves infused with sea salt and wild herbs, the aroma a warm counterpoint to the chill wind, and children darting between carts, their laughter slicing through the fog like beacons. But beneath the normalcy lurked an undercurrent of unease. Whispers followed Elara as she made her way toward the cliffside path leading to the lighthouse, tales of strange lights flickering not from the tower, but from the depths of the hollow itself, where legends spoke of an ancient forge buried in the earth, its embers said to grant visions or drive men mad. Uncle Harlan's lighthouse perched on the precipice like a solitary guardian, its stone tower weathered by centuries of salt spray. The lantern room at its summit, a glass eye winking against the encroaching dusk. Elara climbed the winding trail, the sea's roar growing louder, a symphony of foam and fury against the rocks below. Gulls wheeled overhead, their cries sharp accusations as if warning her away. At the door, weathered oak banded with iron, she knocked thrice, the sound echoing into the void. The door groaned open, revealing Harlan, a gaunt figure of 60, his face a landscape of wrinkles carved by wind and worry, his white beard unkempt, eyes a stormy grey that mirrored the sea. He wore a oilskin coat patched in a dozen places, and his hands, gnarled like driftwood, clutched a tarnished lantern. "Elara," he rasped, his voice a gravelly whisper carried from the depths. "You've come. The embers. They stir. Maps alone won't suffice now." He ushered her into the cramped interior, where charts covered every surface, yellowed parchments depicting coastlines that twisted like serpents, annotated with symbols Elara recognized from forbidden tomes, runes of binding, sigils of awakening. The air was heavy with the scent of whale oil and aged vellum, the fire in the hearth sputtering as if reluctant to burn. Harlan poured her a mug of mulled cider, spiced with cloves and a hint of something sharper, perhaps rum from distant ports. "The village speaks of lights in the hollow," Elara said, warming her hands around the mug, her gaze sweeping the room for clues. "And your telegram? Embers? Uncle? What haunts you?" Harlan's eyes darted to the window, where the fog pressed like an eager listener. "Not haunts, girl. Summons. The forge below, forged by the old ones before the cliffs rose, holds fire that never dies. It calls to those with the blood, our blood. Your father ignored it, paid the price in madness. Now it awakens, drawing shadows from the deep." Elara leaned forward, her cartographer's mind mapping his words. "Shadows? You mean the disappearances? The fishermen lost at sea, the wanderers vanished in the woods. Folklore, surely." Harlan shook his head, retrieving a small iron-bound chest from beneath the table. With a key from his neck, he unlocked it, revealing a fragment of obsidian, veined with glowing filaments like captured lightning. "Touch it," he urged. "Feel the call." Hesitant, Elara extended a finger. The stone pulsed warm, and visions flickered unbidden. A cavernous forge where molten rivers flowed, figures in hooded robes chanting in a tongue that twisted like smoke, and a great ember at the center pulsing with life. She jerked back, heart pounding. "What is this? Sorcery?" "Legacy," Harlan replied, his voice steadying. "Our ancestors bound it, but the seal weakens. Someone meddles, seeks to harness it for power. The maps you draw, with your gift for seeing the unseen paths, they're the key to resealing it." Before Elara could press further, a frantic pounding echoed at the door. Harlan rose, lantern in hand, and admitted a sodden villager. Old Thomas the harbour master, his face ashen beneath a sou'wester hat dripping meltwater. "Keeper, lights again, in the hollow, and young Lila's gone, ventured out at dusk, chasing fireflies," she said, "but those ain't no insects." Harlan's grey eyes darkened. The call strengthens. "Elara, come, we must descend." The trio ventured into the thawing dusk, the path to the hollow a treacherous slope slick with slush, flanked by thorny brambles that clawed at cloaks like greedy fingers. Aye! The fog parted in wisps, revealing the hollow. A sunken basin ringed by cliffs, its floor a tangle of roots and boulders, the air humming with an unnatural warmth that defied the season. At the center, faint glows pulsed from fissures in the earth, like heartbeats from below. As they approached, a figure emerged from the shadows. Lila, the baker's daughter. Her eyes glazed, hands outstretched toward a crack where embers flickered. "It sings," she murmured, voice ethereal. "Promises wonders." Elara, drawing on her mapping instincts, noted the patterns, the glows aligning with ley lines from her uncle's charts, the ground vibrating subtly. "It's pulling her in," she said, grabbing Lila's arm. The girl resisted, then collapsed as Harlan intoned words from an old dialect, the obsidian fragment in his pocket flaring briefly. Back at the lighthouse, with Lila warmed by the fire and sent home with Thomas, Harlan turned to Elara. "The meddler accelerates the awakening. Tomorrow, we delve deeper. Your maps will guide us to the forge's heart." As night deepened, Elara pored over the charts by candlelight, her quill sketching connections unseen. Whispers from the hollow echoed in her mind. a siren's lure promising knowledge beyond measure. But beneath the thrill lurked dread. What if the embers called not just to seal, but to claim her as their own? The flame in the lantern flickered, casting shadows that seemed to beckon, the chapter's revelations igniting a quest where legacy and peril intertwined. Chapter 2. Whispers from the Depths. The morning after the Hollow's eerie summons dawned with a deceptive serenity. The fog lifting from Eldridge Hollow like a veil drawn back by invisible hands, revealing the jagged cliffs in sharp relief against a sky streaked with the pale fire of sunrise. Thornwick stirred awake below, smoke curling from chimneys, as fishermen hauled their boats toward the churning sea, their calls mingling with the gulls' plaintive cries. But up at the lighthouse, the air hummed with a latent charge, as if the obsidian fragment's pulse had seeped into the stones themselves. Elara had slept fitfully. Dreams haunted by molten rivers and chanting figures, their faces shifting like smoke. Now, as she descended the spiral stairs, the scent of sizzling bacon and strong coffee greeted her, a grounding anchor in the swirl of mystery. Harlan was already at the scarred pine table, his gnarled hands sketching runes on a scrap of parchment with charcoal, his grey eyes distant, as if gazing into abyssal depths. "The forge stirs at low tide," he said without preamble, sliding a plate toward her. "We'll descend then, when the sea caves yawn open. Your maps, bring them. They'll guide where eyes fail." Elara nodded, unfolding her satchel to reveal the charts, intricate renderings of the Hollow's topography, inked with contours that captured not just elevation, but the subtle anomalies she'd noted, magnetic deviations pulling compass needles askew, thermal vents hinted by warmer soil patches. "These runes," she said, tracing one that resembled a coiled serpent, "they match symbols on the cliffs, protective wards." Harlan's beard twitched in a grim smile. "Aye, set by our forebears." The embers were a gift, and a curse, from the deep earth, forged in volcanic fury when the world was young. They grant visions of what was, what is, what might be. But tamperers awaken guardians, shadows that feed on doubt. Their breakfast was interrupted by a visitor. Not the harbour master this time, but a wiry woman in her 40s, clad in a cloak of sealskin, her hair a wild tangle of salt-streaked black, eyes like polished jet. She introduced herself as Mira Kell, the village herbalist, her voice a low rumble like distant thunder. "Heard of the girl's trance last night," she said, accepting a mug of coffee, with hands marked by herb stains and old burns. "The embers call louder each cycle. My gran spoke of it, every 7 years, when the comet streaks the sky." Elara leaned in, intrigued. "Comet? The one due this month, Halley's apparition?" Mira nodded, her jet eyes narrowing. "Brings flux, stirs the deep. Your bloodline guards it, Voss, but outsiders meddle. Seen figures in the caves cloaked, carrying lanterns that burn blue, not yellow, seeking the forge's heart for power." Harlan's charcoal snapped. "Blue flame, alchemist's fire. Someone knows the old ways." He rose abruptly. "We go now. Mira, watch the tower. Signal if shadows rise." The descent to the sea caves was a perilous ballet. The path a narrow ledge etched into the cliff face, slick with spray and crumbling underfoot. Elara's boots gripped tenuously, her satchel thumping against her hip as Harlan led with a rope coiled over his shoulder, his lantern swinging like a pendulum. The sea below roiled in retreat, exposing a labyrinth of tide pools and barnacle-crusted rocks. The cave's yawning black moors fringed with seaweed that undulated like living tendrils. The air grew heavier, salted with an undernote of sulphur. as if the earth's breath escaped from hidden fissures. At the largest cave's mouth, Harlan paused, igniting a flare that sputtered to life in emerald hues, illuminating walls veined with quartz that sparkled like embedded stars. "The forge lies through the labyrinth," he said. "Your maps led us." Alara unrolled a parchment, her finger tracing a route derived from seismic echoes she'd measured years ago. "This way! Avoid the sinkholes!" They ventured in, the flare's light casting grotesque shadows that seemed to writhe independently, the drip of water echoing like furtive footsteps. Conversation turned to lore, Harlan recounting how their ancestors, shipwrecked Norsemen, had bound the embers with blood oaths to prevent cataclysm. Alara countering with scientific musings, perhaps geothermal vents fueling hallucinations via gases. Deeper in, the cave widened into a chamber where stalactites hung like fangs, and the floor sloped toward a pool of unnaturally still water, its surface mirroring the flare's glow. Here, Alara spotted anomalies, fresh boot prints in the silt, not theirs, leading to a crevice veiled by dripping vines. "Someone's been here recently," she whispered, kneeling to examine a discarded vial. Its glass etched with alchemical symbols, residue glittering like fool's gold. Harlan's face hardened. "Meddlers! Press on! The heart awaits!" The path narrowed, forcing them to sidle through a fissure where the walls pressed close, whispering echoes of their breaths back at them. Emerging into a vast cavern, the air warmed palpably, the ground thrumming underfoot. At the center loomed the forge, an anvil of blackened stone encircled by a moat of sluggish lava, the embers at its core pulsing with an inner light, crimson veins snaking through the rock like living arteries. The heat was a living entity, drawing sweat from their brows, the air shimmering with distortion. But they were not alone. From the shadows stepped a cloaked figure, hood falling back to reveal a man of middling years, his face sharp and scholarly, spectacles perched on a beak-like nose, a satchel bulging with tomes and tools. "Voss!" he sneered, his voice cultured with a hint of mania. "I knew the call would draw you. Dr. Elias Thorne, at your service. The Ember's power will rewrite history, grant foresight to command empires." Harlan brandished his rope like a whip. "Thorne, the antiquarian from the city. You tamper with forces beyond mortal grasp." Alara's mind raced connecting dots. Thorne, a rival scholar she'd encountered in London archives, obsessed with arcane energies. You seek visions for profit, selling prophecies to the highest bidder. But the Guardians, Thorne laughed, a sound like cracking ice. "Mere myths, watch." He approached the forge, chanting in a guttural tongue, the embers flaring brighter. But the ground trembled, shadows coalescing into forms, ethereal wraiths with eyes like coals, their whispers a cacophony of warnings. Chaos erupted. The wraiths lunged, Thorne scrambling back as Harlan lassoed a stalactite for leverage, pulling Alara to safety. In the melee, Thorne's satchel spilled, a journal tumbling into the moat, pages igniting in a burst of revelations, sketches of the forge, notes on blood rights, and a list of buyers, nobles, industrialists hungry for advantage. As the wraiths encircled Thorne, he pleaded, "The embers promised dominion!" But they enveloped him, his screams echoing as he vanished in a swirl of ash. The forge dimmed, the guardians dissipating like smoke. Shaken, Alara and Harlan retreated, the cave's warmth receding behind them. "He paid the price," Harlan muttered, "but others may follow. The call spreads." Back at the lighthouse, as the sun climbed, Alara inked new wards on her maps, the ember's pulse a faint echo in her veins. The chapter's perils had forged their bond stronger, but the whispers from the depths hinted at greater trials. The forge's awakening far from quelled, its secrets beckoning deeper into the hollow's heart. Chapter 3. Veins of Fire. The aftermath of the cavern's chaos clung to Ilara like the sulphurous residue on her clothes. An acrid reminder that the forge's guardians were no mere folklore, but entities of primal fury, their whispers fading but not forgotten, as she and Harlan emerged from the sea caves into the blinding midday sun. The tide had turned, flooding the pools with foaming brine that erased their footprints, as if the sea itself conspired to seal the hollow's secrets anew. Thornwick sprawled below, its harbour alive with the clatter of unloading crates and the shouts of merchants haggling over fresh catches. The village oblivious to the abyss yawning beneath its foundations. Ilara's hands trembled as she clutched the salvaged journal from Thorn's satchel, its pages singed at the edges, ink running in places like blood from a wound. Harlan, his oilskin coat torn from a wraith's grasp, leaned heavily on a driftwood staff he'd snatched during their flight. "The doctor's folly bought us time," he grunted, his grey eyes scanning the horizon where fishing boats bobbed like toys on the swells. But the embers rage now. Feel it in the ground, a tremor like a beast stirring from slumber. His meddling cracked the wards further. Ilara nodded, the obsidian fragment in her pocket pulsing faintly against her thigh, a heartbeat syncing with her own. His journal, it's a cipher of sorts. Sketches of the forge, but overlaid with celestial charts. The comet's path aligns with these vents. If it peaks tomorrow, the flux could shatter the bindings entirely. They descended to the village proper, the path widening into a cobbled road flanked by salt-weathered shops. The apothecary with its jars of luminous fungi harvested from the cliffs. The smithy where hammers rang out in rhythmic defiance. And the inn, the Salty Gull, its sign creaking in the breeze like a gull's mocking cry. Word of Thorn's accident, framed as a cliffside fall, hadn't yet spread, but Mira Kell awaited them at the inn's threshold, her sealskin cloak draped over a bench, a pouch of herbs at her belt exuding the sharp aroma of valerian and nightshade. "The tower's quiet," Mira reported, her jet eyes flicking to the journal. "But villagers murmur of dreams, visions of fire under the waves. Your blood stirred it, Voss. And now this tome, let me see." Inside the inn's common room, where fishermen nursed tankards of dark ale by a roaring peat fire, the trio claimed a corner table shrouded by pipe smoke and low beams. The walls, adorned with nets and harpoons from legendary catches, seemed to lean in as Ilara spread the journal. Pages fluttered open to diagrams. The forge's anvil, encircled by runes, arrows denoting energy flows that mimicked tidal patterns, and notations in Thorn's precise script. Comet's perihelion amplifies resonance. Blood key unlocks core. Visions grant dominion over markets, wars. Mira traced a finger over a star map. He's no lone fool. References the consortium. City folk betting on prophecies for gain. But look here, a name, Viscount Lorne, London patron, funded Thorn's digs. Harlan's fist clenched. Lorne, the shipping magnate. His vessels dock here monthly, hauling ore from the mines. If he seeks the embers for foresight in trade routes, storms. Ilara's cartographer's instinct flared. Or worse, control over fates. We need allies. Mira, your herbs. Can they shield against the call? The herbalist smirked, unpacking her pouch to reveal vials of iridescent liquid. Moonwort elixir dulls the mind's ear to whispers. But it blurs vision too. Drink sparingly. Their council was disrupted by a commotion at the door. A group of miners, soot-streaked and wild-eyed, bursting in with tales of collapse in the eastern shafts. "Ground shook like thunder below," one bellowed, his beard flecked with dust. "Voices in the rock, promising riches, then the timbers gave." Harlan exchanged glances with Alara. "The forge's veins spread. We must staunch it before the comet's zenith." Venturing to the mines, a honeycomb of tunnels burrowed into the cliffs like wormholes in an apple. The air grew stale and metallic, lanterns flickering against walls glistening with quartz veins that pulsed faintly, as if alive. The collapsed shaft loomed, rubble barring entry, but Alara's maps revealed a side passage, an old smuggler's route she'd charted in youth. Squeezing through, the trio navigated by Mira's phosphorescent fungi, their glow casting an otherworldly pallor. Deeper, the tremors intensified, the walls warmed to the touch. Whispers slithered from cracks. Promises of lost loves returned. Fortunes unearthed. Enemies vanquished. Alara felt the tug, visions flickering. Her father, not mad but enlightened, beckoning her to embrace the fire. She shook it off, sipping Mira's elixir, the bitterness grounding her. At the vein's heart, they found the source, a fissure exposing a lava tributary, embers dancing within like captive stars. But wedged in the rock, a device, brass and crystal, whirring with clockwork precision, amplifying the pulse. "Thorn's contraption," Harlan growled, smashing it with his staff. The whispers ceased abruptly, the vein cooling. But as they retreated, a figure detached from the shadows, minor but his eyes glowed with unnatural fire. "You cannot silence the call," he intoned, voice layered like echoes in a well. "Lorne comes! His ships carry the key!" A scuffle ensued. The possessed miner lunged, but Mira's herbs, flung as powder, dazed him, allowing escape. Back in the daylight, the miner collapsed, memory wiped clean. "Puppets," Mira muttered. "The embers possess the weak-willed." Alara, journal in hand, deciphered more. Lorne's arrival imminent, aboard the steamer Aurora, carrying a blood relic, perhaps a Voss artifact to unlock the core. "We intercept him at the dock," she declared. The chapter's revelations propelled them toward confrontation, the whispers from the depths now a clarion, the forge's veins of fire threading through Thornwick's underbelly, beckoning the climax under the comet's gaze. Chapter 4. Tides of Revelation. The steamer Aurora sliced through the harbour's choppy waters like a blade forged from the sea itself, its hull a sleek iron behemoth, belching steam that mingled with the salt-laden mist, obscuring the docks in a veil of industrial haze. Thornwick's quay bustled with the controlled chaos of arrival, dock hands in oil-smeared aprons coiling ropes thick as wrists, crates of ore thudding onto wooden planks with resonant booms, and overseers barking orders in clipped accents that cut through the gull's cacophony. The comet's tail, a faint streak against the twilight sky, hung like a celestial omen, its ethereal glow casting the scene in an otherworldly pallor, as if the stars themselves conspired in the unfolding drama. Alara, cloaked in a borrowed fisherman's mantle to blend with the throng, felt the obsidian fragment in her pocket thrum with urgency, its warmth a counterpoint to the evening chill that nipped at exposed skin. Harlan flanked her left, his driftwood staff disguised as a walking aid, while Mira Kell melted into the shadows on her right, her sealskin cloak rendering her near invisible amid the crates. "Lorne's cabin, starboard side, gilded portholes," Harlan muttered, his breath fogging. "He'll disembark last with guards. We strike swift, seize the relic before he deploys it." Ilara's hazel eyes scanned the deck as the gangplank lowered with a metallic groan. Viscount Lorne emerged, an imposing figure in a tailored greatcoat of midnight wool, his face a mask of aristocratic disdain framed by mutton-chop whiskers and a top hat that defied the wind. Flanked by two burly retainers, ex-soldiers by their rigid postures and scarred knuckles, he carried a locked valise chained to his wrist, its brass fittings glinting under the quay's gas lamps. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Lorne, the magnate whose shipping empire spanned oceans, rumoured to divine profitable routes through uncanny luck. As Lorne stepped onto the dock, Ilara moved with cartographer's precision, weaving through the labourers like lines on a map. "Distract the guards," she hissed to Mira. The herbalist nodded, slipping a vial from her pouch and uncorking it near the retainers. A subtle puff of vapour, scented with lavender but laced with a disorienting essence. The men faltered, eyes glazing as phantom itches plagued them, scratching furiously. Harlan surged forward, staff sweeping low to trip Lorne, who stumbled with an aristocratic yelp. Ilara darted in, her fingers, nimble from years of inking delicate contours, snatching the valise's chain. But Lorne's grip was iron. He whirled, his free hand drawing a concealed derringer, its barrel a snub-nosed threat gleaming in the lamplight. "Thieves! You'll not rob a viscount!" The scuffle erupted into a whirlwind. Harlan parried the pistol with his staff, the shot cracking harmlessly into the sea, while Mira tackled a guard, her herbs inducing a sneezing fit that felled him like a tree. Ilara twisted the chain, using leverage from her mapping tools, a hidden compass spike, to pry it free. The valise tumbled into her grasp, but Lorne's eyes, cold as Arctic depths, locked on hers. "You fools meddle with forces that devour empires. The relic awakens the fire, visions of conquest." Dock hands, drawn by the commotion, formed a wary circle, their lanterns swinging like pendulums, casting oscillating shadows that made the scene a grotesque puppet show. Harlan hauled Lorne upright, staff at his throat. "The blood relic! What is it? Speak, or the sea claims you!" Lorne's laugh was a brittle shard. "A Voss heirloom, your ancestor's fingerbone, etched with binding runes. Combined with the comet's flux, it commands the embers fully. Thrones will topple at my word." Ilara's blood chilled. The fragment in her pocket flared hot, as if recognizing kin. But before interrogation deepened, a tremor shook the quay, the ground buckling like a beast rousing. Crates toppled, spilling ore in clattering avalanches. And from the hollow's direction, a low rumble echoed, the embers' protest at the relic's proximity. Chaos reigned. Workers fled as fissures snaked across the dock, steam hissing from cracks like dragon's breath. Mira pulled Ilara back as a plank splintered, the valise nearly slipping into the abyss. Harlan released Lorne, who scrambled aboard the Aurora, bellowing retreat. The steamer's whistle pierced the tumult, engines churning as it pulled away, leaving the relic in Ilara's hands. Regrouping at the Salty Gull, the inn's common room, now a haven of flickering candlelight and hushed patrons nursing bruises from the quake, Ilara unlocked the valise with a hairpin twist. Inside, nestled in velvet, lay the relic, a slender bone, yellowed with age, inscribed with runes that glowed faintly, pulsing in sync with the obsidian. "Our bloodline's anchor," Harlan said, his voice awed. "With this, we can reinforce the wards, or doom us if misused." Mira examined it, her jet eyes narrowing. "The comet peaks at midnight. We must ritualize at the forge. Bind it before Lorne returns with reinforcements. But as they planned, a new ally emerged. The miner from the shafts now lucid, his possession lifted with the device's destruction. "Name's Garrick," he said, his soot-streaked face earnest over a tankard. Felt the whispers, promised gold veins, but saw visions too. Lorne's men in the mines planting amplifiers. They're burrowing alternate paths to the forge. Ilara's maps unfurled on the table, her quill racing to incorporate Garrick's intel. Tunnels veering from the main shafts, converging on the cavern. "We collapse the branches," she proposed, sketching explosives from the smithy's stores. "But timing's key. Lure them in, then seal." The chapter's momentum surged as they mobilized. Garrick rallying miners with tales of the threat to their livelihoods. Mira brewing decoys. Files that mimicked ember glow to mislead. Harlan fortified the relic with wards from his parchment, while Ilara refined the maps, her auburn curls falling across her face as calculations danced in her mind. Dusk fell with the comet blazing brighter, a fiery streak heralding climax. The group descended once more, this time through the mines, lanterns bobbing like will-o'-the-wisps. Echoes of picks rang distant, Lorne's diggers advancing. Ambush set. Mira's decoys lured them into a narrow vein, where Garrick triggered the charges, rubble cascading in a thunderous seal, cries muffled as dust billowed. Yet victory was bittersweet. A surviving digger, coughing through the haze, revealed Lorne's ploy. A diversion. The ship's not fleeing, circling to the cove, underwater access via submersible. Ilara's heart raced. The maps confirmed, a submerged cave linking to the forge. The tides of revelation surged, propelling them toward underwater perils. The embers veins of fire, now a network pulsing with imminent eruption under the comet's gaze. Chapter 5. The Comet's Reckoning. As midnight's veil draped over Eldridge Hollow, the comet blazed across the firmament like a divine scribe etching fate into the stars. Its tail a luminous scar that bathed Thornwick in an unearthly silver sheen. The village slumbered uneasily. Windows shuttered against the celestial spectacle, but whispers of unease rippled through the lanes. Dogs howling at unseen presences, lanterns flickering without wind. Up at the lighthouse, Ilara, Harlan, Mira, and Garrick huddled over the maps, the relic bone glowing on the table like a fallen star, its runes pulsing in rhythm with the comet's arc. The air thrummed with electric tension, the obsidian fragment in Ilara's hand vibrating as if alive, urging them toward the forge's heart before Lorne's submersible breached the underwater veil. "We strike at the cove," Harlan decreed, his voice a steady anchor amid the celestial hum. "The relic binds the embers, but blood must seal it, our blood. Voss lineage." He sliced his palm with a ritual dagger from his chest, a heirloom etched with the same runes, letting crimson droplets fall onto the bone, which absorbed them like thirsty soil, flaring brighter. Ilara mirrored him, the sting sharp but invigorating, her blood mingling with his. The relic now thrumming with a harmonious resonance. The maps show the submersible's path, through the flooded cavern, emerging at the forge's moat. We ambush there, under the comet's peak. Mira distributed amulets, woven from moonwort and iron filings, to ward off possession, their cool weight around necks a talisman against the whispers. Garrick, his miner's build coiled with resolve, hefted a satchel of black powder charges. "We'll flood the tunnel behind them, steal Lorne in if need be." The descent to the cove was a nocturnal odyssey, the comet's light guiding their steps along a hidden trail overgrown with luminescent fungi that glowed like wayward constellations. The sea, unusually calm under the astral influence, lapped at the pebble shore with a deceptive gentleness, hiding the submerged cave's maw. A dark orifice framed by barnacle-encrusted rocks, where bioluminescent plankton swirled in eddies like captive spirits. They waded in, the water icy fingers clutching at legs, lanterns hooded to avoid detection. Deeper, the cave sloped downward, the ceiling lowering until they swam in single file, breaths echoing in the confined space. Ilara's maps, waterproofed with wax, floated ahead, her strokes marking air pockets where they surfaced to gulp oxygen. The relic secured in a pouch at her chest warmed against her skin, its pulse quickening as they neared the forge's subterranean nexus. Emerging into the main cavern, the forge loomed transformed. The anvil pulsed with intensified crimson, lava moat bubbling like a cauldron on the boil, vapours rising in spectral forms that twisted into half-seen faces, ancestors perhaps, or echoes of the bound. The comet's light filtered through fissures above, a silvery beam spotlighting the core, where embers danced in frenzied spirals. But Lorne had arrived first. His submersible, a brass leviathan with portholes like glowing eyes, bobbed in the moat, its hatch open, disgorging a cadre of hired mercenaries in diving suits, their harpoon guns glinting. Lorne himself stood at the anvil's edge, a ornate chalice in hand, chanting incantations from a stolen grimoire, his greatcoat sodden, but his demeanour triumphant. "The comet aligns! With the relic, dominion is mine!" Harlan charged from the shadows, staff whirling to disarm a guard, the clash of wood on metal ringing like a forge's hammer. Mira unleashed a volley of herb-laced darts, their tips inducing hallucinations that sent two mercenaries reeling, clawing at phantom flames. Garrick primed a charge, hurling it toward the submersible, the explosion rocking the cavern, water erupting in a geyser that buckled the hull. Ilara confronted Lorne directly, relic bone clutched like a talisman. "Your greed awakens what should sleep. The embers consume those who command them." Lorne's eyes, frenzied under the comet's glow, locked on the bone. "The blood? Key, give it here, girl, or join the Guardians in oblivion." He lunged, chalice swinging like a mace, but Ilara dodged, her cartographer's agility turning the anvil into a battlefield of evasion. The chalice spilled its contents, a elixir of quicksilver and herbs, onto the moat, igniting a chain reaction. The lava frothed, Guardians materializing not as wraiths, but as molten silhouettes, their forms humanoid yet fluid, advancing with hissing steps. Chaos peaked. Harlan fended off a Guardian with his staff, its tip charring on contact. Mira chanted counter wards, her voice a melodic barrier that slowed the entities. Garrick grappled a mercenary into the moat, the man's screams cut short by the heat. Ilara, cornered by Lorne, fainted with the relic, then tossed it skyward. Harlan catching it mid-air, slashing his palm anew to anoint it fully. "The binding!" Harlan shouted, pressing the bone to the anvil. The runes ignited, a vortex of light swirling, drawing the Guardians back into the core. Lorne, desperate, snatched at Ilara's pouch, the obsidian fragment tumbling free. He seized it, eyes widening as visions assaulted him. Futures of ruin, empires crumbling under his hubris. "No, the embers lie!" In his distraction, Ilara retrieved the dagger, severing the grimoire from his grasp. The book ignited on the anvil, pages curling into ash, the comet's beam intensifying as if in judgment. Lorne staggered, the fragment scorching his palm, Guardians encircling him in a fiery embrace. His final cry echoed, a blend of defiance and terror as he dissolved into embers scattered by an updraft. The forge quiesced, the moat cooling to obsidian glass, the comet's tail fading as dawn crested. Exhausted, the group surfaced, the submersible sinking in defeat, mercenaries fleeing into the woods. Back at the lighthouse, as the sun banished the night's spectres, Alara and Harlan interred the relic in a warded chest, the obsidian beside it, their pulses synced in eternal vigil. "The call quiets," Harlan said, bandaging wounds by the fire. "But echoes linger. Our duty passes to you." Alara, gazing at the sea's horizon, felt the weight and the liberation. The hollow's secret sealed. Thornwick awakened to a new day, the comet's reckoning a legend reborn, her maps now guardians of peace.